I've never been the type to snoop into my husband's business. Never. I've always given him space, trust, and above all, respect. But sometimes, that thing we call instinct, it's stronger than reason. For a few months now, a woman had been constantly around him. Melina, his longtime friend, as he liked to say. Always elegant, always available, always present. She wasn't just his friend. She slowly slid into his work life, into meetings, into decisions. At first, I didn't pay much attention. I thought, he needs help, she's competent, she advises him. But one evening, she came over for dinner. Just like that. Uninvited. Too polite a smile, too confident a look. And a strange way of speaking about our company as if she already owned a piece of it. That night, something clicked inside me. Not jealousy, not ego, just a silent alarm, a sudden sense of caution, an instinct I couldn't ignore. She had inserted herself without me realizing. And my husband, too focused on growing his business, hadn't noticed a thing. But I had. And more importantly, I had felt it. And you know what they say. When a woman senses something, you better not ignore it. I started paying attention, asking questions, watching every detail, because something told me this wouldn't end well. My husband ran the business with passion, but like many entrepreneurs, he delegated certain aspects. Accounting, transfers, he trusted people, especially Melina. And I kept watching, discreetly, silently, waiting for something to jump out at me. One night, as he slept deeply, I saw his laptop left open. I didn't go through his emails. No, I went into the company files. The ones that say very little, but reveal everything. The accounts. And then, I froze. Recurring transfers. Large amounts. Bank accounts I didn't recognize. And more importantly, transactions missing from the reports he'd shown me just weeks before. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Didn't want to make a mistake. So I took screenshots. Wrote everything down. I even revisited old accounting lessons I had long forgotten. I wanted to understand. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Someone was quietly draining funds, and that someone had full access. The next day, I showed up at the office unannounced. Melina was there, again, sitting in the executive chair, as if it were hers. I greeted her politely, but in my mind, it was all lining up. She was at the center of it. She knew too much. And my husband, blinded by trust, saw nothing. That's when I knew. I had to act, not emotionally, but strategically. That's when my real plan began. I knew that if I told him about my suspicions directly, he'd brush them off, tell me I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. So I chose another path. I went to see a notary, explained calmly that I wanted to enter the company's capital, not just to be listed on paper, but to have real decision-making power. At first, the notary looked surprised, but when I showed him the bank records and printed documents, his expression changed. He understood I wasn't doing this for money. I was doing this to protect what my husband had built. What we had built. Next, I saw a lawyer. I wanted to go further. Secure veto rights on all major decisions, especially the sale of the company. He told me it was possible, but my husband had to agree. So, I waited for the right moment. I offered him a pact. Give me shares in the business. Give me a voice in key decisions. I'm not asking to take over, just to be trusted. He hesitated, but I looked him straight in the eyes and said, if something ever goes wrong, you'll be glad I'm here. Eventually, he agreed. He signed. And from that day forward, no major decision could be made without my consent. 3 weeks later, the trap closed. One morning, my husband received a registered letter. A proposal from a foreign company offering to buy 60% of the business. Tempting offer, attractive terms, and most importantly, a contract already signed. By him. But something was missing. My signature. He showed me the file, confident. He thought he was making a great deal. He thought we were finally taking the next step. But when I saw the buyer's company name, I felt cold sweat down my spine. It wasn't unfamiliar. I'd seen it in one of the suspicious transfers. I discreetly contacted a financial expert, asked him to investigate, and what he found left me breathless. The buyer was a shell company, a front created 6 months earlier. And behind it, Melina. She had planned it all. Slowly, carefully. She had advised my husband to manipulate him. She had slipped into the accounts. And now, she wanted to buy everything cheap. But she had forgotten one thing. That veto right. My signature. And this time, I was ready to use it. I didn't scream. Didn't make a scene. I simply told my husband, invite Melina over tonight. Tell her I want to thank her for all she's done for us. She arrived, as usual, well-dressed. Confident smile. Subtle but expensive perfume. She sat at the table, relaxed. Completely at ease. I went to get the business sale file. Laid it in front of her. Opened to the right page. Right across from the shell company's name. She went pale. My husband still didn't understand. I handed him a bank statement. Then another. And calmly said, recognize this account. She straightened. Her smile vanished. Then she said, you can't prove anything. But I had it all. The transfers. The documents. The dates. And most of all, my husband's silence, stunned. He asked, it was you? You've been betraying me all this time. And then Melina uttered a chilling phrase. I thought you'd be too blind to see it. Everything crumbled in that moment. The truth, the lies, and her mask. My husband was crushed. He sat silently, eyes lost in space. He couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Melina, his childhood friend, his confidant, his closest collaborator. She had planned it all. I stood, calm, cold, but inside, I was shaken. I didn't want to be right. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted it to be a misunderstanding. But no, it was all real. Melina stood up. She tried to leave. I said, you're not going anywhere. I called the lawyer. Then the notary had the misuse of company documents officially recorded and launched a formal procedure to suspend any legal action underway. Thanks to my veto power, the sale was blocked. Melina received a legal summons days later. And my husband, he was no longer the same. He told me, I didn't see what you saw. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I just held him. Because deep down, it wasn't just his company she wanted to destroy. It was him. That night, he understood why I had insisted. Why I needed that power. Why I'd been cautious. The business survived. But just barely. We had to do a full audit. Shut down certain accounts. Change every access code. And above all, rebuild trust between us. My husband took weeks to recover. He felt betrayed. Guilty. Ashamed. But I told him, you don't need to feel ashamed. You trusted a friend. She's the one who broke that trust, not you. And me? I discovered a new version of myself. Strong, clear-eyed, protective. Many said I was right. Others accused me of being too suspicious, too hard. But what I did out of love, out of instinct. Today, the company is stronger. We redefined our roles. I kept my shares and my veto power, not to control, but to protect. Melina vanished from our lives, charged with breach of trust. No one defends her now, and those who supported her disappeared too. What did I learn from all this? That sometimes you must trust that quiet voice inside, the one that whispers when the world is shouting, the one we often call intuition. After Melina's departure, everything felt fragile. Not just the company, but us, our home, our trust, our foundation. We didn't talk much at first. There were long silences. My husband was angry, mostly at himself. He said things like, how could I let her in so deeply? Why didn't I see what you saw? I never said, I told you so. I just listened and reminded him. You trusted. That's not a weakness. Meanwhile, the company was in recovery mode. The financial team worked tirelessly. We discovered just how much Melina had planned to strip. Contracts she tried to redirect. Clients she'd subtly manipulated. Even employees she had convinced to follow her lead. I took a more active role in the business. At first, it was out of necessity, but soon, I realized I had a voice. Ideas. Instincts worth trusting. Together, my husband and I restructured the management system. We put safeguards in place. Dual signatures for all key decisions. Transparent accounting. Regular audits. No more blind trust. We also reconnected slowly. Walks in the evening. Silent breakfasts turning into long talks. Small gestures, rebuilding something broken. And one day, he looked at me and said, if it weren't for you, I'd have lost everything. Not just the business, but my dignity, my life. I smiled, because in that moment, I knew what I had done. It hadn't been easy, but it was right. And now we had something stronger, not just to save business, but a new beginning. In the weeks that followed, rumors spread about the betrayal, about the blocked sale, about Melina's fall. Some people whispered, others asked questions outright, but I never responded with bitterness, just clarity. We organized a press release, not to shame Melina, but to reassure clients, partners, and stakeholders. We clarified the situation, spoke of preventive action, mentioned the legal steps we had taken. The response was surprising. Many applauded our transparency. Clients stayed. Some even said, "It's rare to see a company face problems head-on like this." But one of the most surprising outcomes was how people started looking at me, not just as his wife, but as a real partner, a strategist, a leader. For the first time, I was invited to meetings, asked for input, respected for my decisions. My background, once seen as irrelevant, now mattered. My husband was proud. He never took credit for what I had done. In fact, he often said, "She saved us. She saw what I didn't." And Melina? She faced multiple lawsuits, breach of trust, attempted fraud. The legal process was long, but necessary. She disappeared from our industry's radar. And our reputation? It came back stronger. Because people love a story of redemption, of resilience, of a fall prevented just in time. And in this story, we weren't victims. We were fighters. We turned betrayal into revival. Trust is a strange thing. So easy to give, so hard to rebuild once broken. After what happened, we both had to redefine it. Between us, within ourselves, in business and in life. My husband no longer assumed good intentions blindly. He began asking more questions, reading the fine print, taking a second opinion. And I, who had always stood in the background, learned to speak up, not with suspicion, but with wisdom. We attended leadership seminars together, not for skills, but for healing. We rebuilt our partnership, at home and at work. He once said, "I used to think trust was the absence of doubt. Now I know, it's the presence of accountability." Those words stuck with me. We also set new rules, not rigid ones, just clear ones. Transparency, respect for each other's instincts, monthly strategy reviews, open-door policies at the company. Employees noticed. They felt safer, more involved, more loyal. One junior manager even said, "This company feels like a family now." And for the first time in years, we laughed again. Not forced laughs, but the kind that bubbles up from peace. Melina's betrayal had hurt us deeply, but it had also peeled away illusions. We no longer lived in a world of blind belief. We lived in truth, and that truth was empowering. Because once you've seen what danger looks like behind a smile, you never stop watching, but you also never stop growing. There are nights when I still think about it. How close we came. How one more signature, one less question, could have ruined everything. It's terrifying. We would have lost the company, the house, the years of hard work, the reputation. Worse, we would have lost each other. My husband admitted that if the sale had gone through, and he discovered the betrayal too late, he wouldn't have recovered. He said, "I would have blamed myself forever." And honestly, I believed him, because the worst kind of pain is realizing you opened the door to the one who set your house on fire. That's what Melina did. She didn't steal with a mask. She used a smile, a hug, a shared memory. That's what made it so cruel. But when I think about it longer, I also feel grateful. Grateful that I trusted myself, that I didn't wait for permission to act, that I followed the quiet voice telling me something isn't right. So many women silence that voice, out of fear, out of politeness, out of habit. But I didn't. And because of that, we're still here. Not just surviving, but thriving. That weight of almost losing it all? It's heavy, but it reminds us to cherish what we still have. Years from now, when someone asks me, "What was your greatest act of love?" I won't speak of gifts, or trips, or words. I'll say, I protected what he didn't see was in danger, because love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sharp, decisive, uncompromising. That's what it was for me. I didn't wait for things to collapse. I acted, and in doing so, I preserved more than a company. I preserved dignity, pride, and a legacy. My husband, now older and wiser, often tells our story. He looks people in the eye and says, "If I still have this company, it's because my wife saw what I didn't." Our children will inherit not just a business, but a story, a testimony of a woman who stood her ground, who trusted her instincts, who wasn't afraid to demand a voice. This story isn't just mine. It's every woman's who has ever felt something was wrong and dared to act before it was too late. Melina was clever, but not as clever as intuition. And now, as I sit in my office, pinning new ideas, mentoring new leaders, I smile, Because the empire she tried to steal still stands, still grows. And now, it's stronger than ever, because it was nearly lost. And what is nearly lost becomes more sacred.